Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Newborn. I'm from Defense Acquisition University, and we have a great panel. We have a three-person panel, and hopefully this will be, these panel members will be able to answer the majority of your questions. Since we do have a short time, what I'd like to do is first start with introductions. I will go last as being the moderator. So the first panel member is Stacy Boostjanick, and she'll have 5 minutes to do an introduction, state her role, and then at least give you a takeaway. Go ahead.
Okay, so my name is Stacy Boostjanick. I'm the director of CMMC for policy within the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, the Office of the Chief Information Officer, Security Officer for ANS, and I have a background mostly in contracting and acquisition, and then my takeaway is that CMMC is an extremely important thing for our national security, and we all need to embrace it and move forward.
Okay, thank you very much. And
I didn't take my 5 minutes, so I'll give you back a few.
Yes, okay, there you go. That's okay. I think we're definitely going to have a lot of Q&A time there, though. But let's move on. Robert, you can give your 5-minute spiel.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Robert Santos. I am the president and co-founder of MetroStar Systems. We are an IT services firm for the federal government, and my role there is primarily focused on internal operations. My goal is to make sure that the company has everything we need to do our jobs, as well as be scalable on the systems and infrastructure side. And bringing a lot of best practices and standards to the company has been one of my goals. So we are CMMI level 3 appraised in services and development, and we hold ISO standards for 9001, 20000, and 27001. So it just became natural that when CMMC came out, that it would be my group that took the initiative head on. So we created a Tiger team comprised of cyber, IT, and quality individuals, as well as security people. And we are working through it. So my takeaway is that if you are a government contractor and you have been working towards 800-171, you're kind of on the right path for CMMC. So keep pushing it out. It's definitely attainable. And I am here also to ask many questions, to learn as much as I am, to try to share what we've been going through. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, thank you very much. And we do have one other panel member. His name is Carlton Johnston. He is the vice chair and the board of directors of the CMMC Accreditation Board, and he will be coming on a little bit later. And again, my name is Chris Newborn, and one of the things I just want to bring out that I think is very interesting, and I want to bring out a theme. So I think from my perspective, is really trying to understand government and industry's roles and responsibility to successfully implement and execute the new CMMC process. So I believe I have a great opportunity to work with industry, work with government, and as well as work with academia, and to support OSD, who is really the policy. They're responsible for developing the policy. And again, Carlton Johnston has been delegated to be the governing body to make sure that the policy is being implemented and executed. And then Robert, on the other hand, he is part of the defense industrial base. He's a contractor, and he's going to be responsible for making sure that he implements and executes, as well as the bottom line, protect the sensitive information that resides on his networks and systems. So with that, the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to go into the questions, and I have at least one question for each panel member. They will have at least 10 minutes, and Stacy, you can pick up your extra 5 minutes. But the question I have for you is, what is the status of the DFARS rulemaking what can the acquisition workforce and defense industrial base do to prepare for the interim rule?
So we worked with OMB and OIRA, and we are getting ready to launch the rule as an interim rule. It came out in the FRN on the 1st of October. So it is now open for the public comment period. So people have the ability to go to that site. It's regulations.gov and provide their comments and their review of the rule to go back to OMB. The interim rule will be effective as of November 30th. So they gave us a delayed effectivity date of November 30th, which will allow us to accumulate the comments from industry on that FRN. So come November 30th, we can implement CMMC on various projects across DoD before the rule becomes final, and the rule should become final probably in the spring of 2021. Now, what does that look like? So we in the department have decided, and you'll see it in the rule, that we're going to have a phased rollout approach. So it is anticipated in the first year we will apply CMMC to 10 to 15 acquisitions that the services are going to identify for us, and that they will work through our office to make sure that we have a smooth implementation of CMMC within those select programs. What will happen is you will see the RFIs and the RFPs come out with verbiage that says this is going to be a CMMC implementation program. You will be required, if you want to propose on that at time of award, to have the CMMC level that would be required in the statement of work. The first year, our anticipation is that we will only be requiring programs at the CMMC level 3. We will not have any programs that will raise to the level 4 and 5 yet. That will come in the next year. So we're going to have public comments going on, and then as we're doing that, and the accreditation body is working with industry to help them get certified, we are also going to be working with DAU and providing model contract language for our acquisition folks to be able to make sure that they have the documentation correctly in their RFPs. We'll give you samples of things to look at for implementation purposes. And then we are also working on a acquisition guide to CUI to assist the program managers and the contracting officers in making sure that the CUI is correctly identified and can be easily mapped through the supply chain. Because one of the things that you've got to think about is, even if we say a program has an overarching level 3 CMMC, which is the level that's most directly aligned with the NIST 800-171. I think we only have an additional 20 requirements and 3 practices over and above the NIST 171 in that level. So what will happen is we will have the documentation lined out, but not all suppliers in that supply chain will necessarily have to be level 3. Just because the program is level 3, you're going to have to track and map that CUI as it flows down through the supply chain, because the guy at the end of the day who builds the bolt or one portion of the weapon system or whatever it is you're working on doesn't necessarily have to have CUI. And I think I know a lot of people have probably heard Ms. Arrington speak before, but she has the best story of when she went out to Transcom, and there was a guy that was a welder, and he wanted to have her come out to his shop. He wanted to have a discussion with her. And, you know, he was like, I'm just a welder. I don't need to have any cybersecurity. I'm a simple guy, right? And she said, you know, before she went out there, they made sure she had on her closed-toed shoes, and she didn't have any nylon on, and she wore her safety glasses and had all the safety precautions taken care of. And so she gets out there, and she sees that, you know, she starts talking to the guy, and she was like, well, how do you get your requirements? How do you know what to weld? And he says, oh, they send them to me. She says, where are those? And he points to his Apple Mac that's sitting up on top of the desk or the counter out in the work bay. And he says, they sent him here. And she said she looked at his laptop and she could see his Facebook Messenger and she could see his Amazon delivery notification all on the same laptop. And she said it was a CAD program. And she said, well, can you zoom out on that so I can see what the whole thing was? And it was the structural design of one of our tactical aircraft. And she was like, don't you think that our adversaries might want to have that? And he was like, well, I guess. And she said, or how about this? Do you think our adversaries might want to come, get into your system, change the specifications on those welds so now your quality is low, and they either get one of two things. Either you go out of business because your quality is no longer high enough to do business with the federal government, or one of those welds gets through and we have a catastrophic failure in flight, right? There are two things that they could attack us on. And I don't know if people are also aware of that identity theft is a real thing for companies with their cage codes and what have you, that our adversaries are getting in. They're changing your documentation to the point that now when you get paid by the federal government, that payment no longer goes into your bank account. It goes into an adversary's bank account. And I met a guy out in South Carolina. And he lost $40,000 by that actually happening to him, where somebody got in and changed his information. And he was like, where's my payment? And the government's like, we paid you. And there was nobody to help him recoup his $40,000 because the government wasn't going to pay it twice. And it was because of his lack of a cyber awareness and cyber maturity that he ended up in that scenario. So we need to make sure that our DIB partners are aware and thinking of security for themselves as well as the security of the nation, making sure that data is protected and their important data is protected as well. The CMMC is the first step in moving down that path. One of the main things that we want to be a result of CMMC is that companies start thinking through the different security threats that are out there and how they can be proactive and protect themselves and the nation's information against our adversaries. So, long story, right? Come back around. We're working on the rule. We hope to get those questions answered. My office will be up to their eyeballs in adjudicating answers probably between the end of November and Christmas. So we'll have a quick turnaround to get all those comments adjudicated and back to OIRA to start the final rule process. We're doing a training program to make sure that our acquisition folks on the government side understand the verbiage that needs to go into your contracts and the ability to map that controlled unclassified information through the supply chain. And we're working with the services to identify those specific initial programs. It'll be 15 to 20 this year, 75 next year, 250 in year 3, and 459 programs in years 4 and 5. And then by 2026, it will be required in all contracts except for COTS products. So that's it. We've got our implementation plan. We've got a few things to do, and we're working with the CMMC AB to make sure that they meet all of the relevant ISO standards and compliance to make sure that we have a program that has the highest integrity and that all assessors are trained alike, so there's not a potential for one to be easier than the other. And we want to make sure that we have a lot of protection built into this program.
Okie doke. Thank you. Yeah, I think you hit it all the way around, complete. And what I want to do is I'm going to pass what I say the ball to Robert. So from what Stacy said, Robert, what is your response in regards to from the contractor and really representing the defense industrial base? What is your response to everything that Stacy said that you're doing to prepare to implement the FARS rule? And you're on mute right now.
I completely agree with the cyber feeling. I mean, any company now really needs to look at their security and make sure that it's not only to protect your customers, but you have to protect yourself and your own proprietary information, as well as your user information that you have, because a lot of companies will carry HR information and things that need to be protected. So I do agree with that. One is just, you know, kind of understanding more on where things are going. And understanding the process of it. So being, you know, a company that is recently left the small business realm, and we're now other than small business according to the government standards, you know, we have to implement other required systems as well, whether it be a purchasing system, dependent upon the level at which we are working with the government. So there's a lot that we're doing, and the more understanding and information we get, the better it is and easier it is for us to implement these. So we have all the controls, we know that, but in being not new to the audit rodeo because of all the CMMI appraisals and ISO standards we currently have, understanding more about the audit process, because an ISO audit can go from 3 days to a CMMI audit that could be 10 days. And then understanding more about what is you know, being looked at, the artifacts. We understand documentation on policy and process side, but then there has to be proof, evidence that you're actually implemented the controls that you say you have. And kind of just understanding more about that so we could prepare ourselves, as well as, I guess, and the big thing is the acquisition process. With, I think, was it 15 or 17 coming out this year and then 75 the next. If and we're currently submitting one that has a particular pilot program for CMMC as well. So is it beneficial for us to enter that pilot program, or should we wait until there's an assessor or an accreditor that can actually go for level 3? And you know, I could tell you once they're announced, the floodgates will open, and it's going to be a race to try to get on someone's calendar, right? But if I am going after a solicitation that requires it, do I get bumped up somehow? Is there a group that will be working with me? Is it going to be the same group that I might have had to do a pre-assessment? Or, you know, and these are the questions that I think would help us better understand and prepare for it, because it's going to be a mad rush, and we're doing everything we can to prepare ourselves to be ready for it. But being ready for it doesn't mean we could be in that first wave. It may take some time. So understanding how we get to be part of that first wave, if we are ready, and what will trigger an event. You know, sometimes for the procurement system, if I hit a threshold in monetary value, that triggers that I have to be audited. So if CMMC is part of the contract, do I automatically make it to the top of the list, and things like that? I think that will provide some clarification to everybody that's chomping at the bits and waiting at the gates for this thing to start.
Can I answer that, Chris?
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, please answer that. I was going to answer, but go ahead.
So I think, and I think Karlton should be on.
We are trying to get him on. Maybe I don't see him yet though, but
you guys hear
in
me?
the chat room.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is, right there.
Now,
Okay.
So Karlton, I'm gonna probably pose that to you. I have heard in the past that the AB had thought that for companies that are competing on a near-term contract that requires CMMC, that the AB has a thought or a plan that they would possibly give that company preference for getting assessed in front of another company that is not participating in a near-term contract. Can you talk to that or not?
So repeat the question one more time, make sure I got that right.
So one of Rob's concerns is that, you know, one, how do they get involved in one of the initial implementation contracts? And to that end, we're working with the services to identify those, Rob. So you're going to have to watch for that RFI to come out. Once the services identify a procurement that they want to initiate CMMC on, then we will move forward on that. The question for you, Karlton, was if I'm a company that's going to compete on one of those near-term implementation pilots from the services, do I get preference of getting audited before another company that's just signed up, right? Because if I can't get my audit done in time, then I lose the opportunity to participate in the contract. Okay,
and so I'm actually going to take that back just to make sure I have the right answer on that, because what should be driving it, at least in the initial stages, is the government requirement, i.e., if there are programs that are coming up that are of a critical nature, then the organizations that have gone through that initial process should be the ones in the beginning of the chops. Now, that said, as this continues to evolve, that'll need to be fleshed out. So I am going to take that back for action and just get a formal answer on that, and I'll work that with the PMO.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much, Karlton. And again, what I want to do is provide you the opportunity to give a 5-minute introduction, state who you are, and then maybe a key takeaway that you want the audience to understand.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, and so part of the team that's working on the CMMC AB, the primary focus that we've had for the last few months is working with the PMO to identify how we're going to structure and organize ourselves to meet the requirement of getting people accredited within the system. Where we are today is, as Stacy has pointed out, under the ISO 17011 constraints, or I should say requirement, what we're doing is reassessing with the team how that's going to look. And then as we move forward with the statement of work and then the no-cost contract, we're ready to implement the program over the timelines that will be specified. The main effort here, though, is, and Stacy's talked about this a couple of times, this really shouldn't be anything new. When we look at the previous effort on NIST 800-171, a lot of those things are embedded within the CMMC model. But the difference with the model is that it includes the maturity piece so that people improve over time and space, and the new portion of it includes a verification. So unlike under the NIST 800-171, going forward, it's going to be, we're going to check the homework. And so the one thing I do want to just reemphasize to everybody is, regardless of where we are in deploying CMMC, if you haven't started, even if you're a small business, if you're looking at getting a government contract in the future or near future, then it would behoove you at a minimum to do the level 1s and level 2 for CMMC. If you're going to look and try to get a government contract, then if you haven't started looking at the NIST 800-171 and going through that, then you're a little bit behind. So the one thing I do want to point out is that it's never too late to get started. And as we roll out the CMMC program, if you've done those things ahead of time, it'll make it a bit easier for you to go through the process of verification and the accreditation portion.
No, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And I think that clears up a lot of things and tie in regards to when you look at the roles and responsibilities between OSD as far as being a policymaker, you, Karlton, being the governance body to manage and ensure that the policy are being implemented. And then Robert, you're at the end of it, of taking all these things, looking at it from a technical perspective, but also integrating into your business processes to ensure that, again, you're looking at the bottom line, meeting my contract requirements as well as getting paid for that. So these are the things, and it's really not from a technical standpoint. It's almost from a business or an organization standpoint that people need to understand. And the one thing that I really want to bring out is Ms. Lord. I just found out about 2 weeks ago, but Ms. Lord had sent a memo to the services talking about the DoD assessment methodology, and to say that you need to implement that. So can you talk a little bit about that, Stacy? And then I want Robert to pick up on it to say, what is the impact to you? And I think that really ties into what Karlton say is that, we do have the DFARS 171, and we need to really get that baseline going in order to pivot to the new CMMC process. So Stacy, can you pick up on that memo?
Sure. So the DoD assessments are the basic methodology that was originally put together by CIO, and those are being handled by DCMA's DIBCAC auditors. And so what they've done is when we recognized that companies were not necessarily compliant with the NIST 800-171, oftentimes because they didn't really understand what they were trying to be compliant with, or they didn't understand how to work the paperwork. So the DoD IG report and the Navy Cyber Readiness Review both illuminated the fact that companies were not necessarily really self-attesting correctly that they were compliant with the NIST 800-171. So in an effort to ensure that we are protecting ourselves and doing what we need to do, the DCMA, a DIBCAC group, came up with an audit methodology of basic, medium, and high. Basic is exactly what the NIST 800-171 self-attestation is, but to make sure that you've submitted your system security plan, and in those areas that you have gaps for meeting the requirements of the NIST 800-171, you have a POAM to bridge those gaps. The medium assessment is where you sit down and have a discussion with the DIBCAC auditors to talk through your plan, where your gaps are, and what your plan is to close those gaps. The DIBCAC high assessment is where they come in and they do an over-the-shoulder review with you of those compliances, where you demonstrate that how you meet the compliance with the NIST 800-171. So those will continue until CMMC gets up and running full bore, right? Because the DCMA workforce does not have the manpower or the staffing. They're not adequately resourced to be able to handle all 300,000 companies in the DIB. And that's an estimate, right? So it's 300,000 give or take. So in the meantime, while they're continuing to work through their process, CMMC will start up, and then by 2026, we'll have a crossover to CMMC, and the DIBCAC assessments will sunset. One of the things that we've done in our office is we've come up with a reciprocity between the DIBCAC assessment and the CMMC. So if you are a company that's already had a DIBCAC assessment and you've met all 110 controls of the NIST 800-171, you would only be evaluated on those additional 20 controls that you would have to get for CMMC level 3. And we have a graduated scale. If you meet, and I've forgotten what our reciprocity is, I think it's like if you meet 100, like 90 to 100, then you only have to look at the ones where you have a gap plus the extra ones. When you drop below, I believe, 70 of the controls, then you would have a full CMMC level 3 assessment done with your assessor. But we've come up with a reciprocity agreement in collaboration with the DIBCAC team to ensure that we are in lockstep with them. One of the other things is as we move forward with CMMC, the DIBCAC team will be a pinnacle part of our team, because they're going to help us make sure that the assessor companies have level 3 certification. So the DCMA team is going to be trained and certified and tested along with the CMMC requirements to make sure that they meet all the CMMC requirements just like anybody else. And then they will help the third-party assessment organizations ensure that they have their certification to be able to handle the information from the companies, because we view that as controlled unclassified information. So, and their IT systems will have to be protected and be rated at a CMMC level 3. The DIBCAC team will also step in and assist in spot checks. If we have a company that's getting ready to take on a very critical program and they're in the middle of their 3-year assessment, there's a possibility that the DIBCAC team might come in and do a quick look just to make sure everything's still the same, where it needs to be. If somebody has a breach, and they're going to help us with our forensics to make sure that, if you have a breach It may not necessarily be that your company was negligent and it was a problem on the company side. It could have been that the initial auditor missed something. It could be that our standard doesn't cover that particular hack. It may be something new that we've never seen before that we need to incorporate into our standard. Or 3, it could be that the company has gotten a little bit lax and let some of their requirements drop. And so therefore we would need to know that and ensure that we had that covered. So does that answer your question, Chris?
That did. That's the part of it. Now, on the other side, in regards to Karlton, how is the CMMC AB and assessors actually going to take advantage of this information? And I'm really looking at in regards to reciprocity, as well as Robert, you can feed in that of saying what artifacts are going to be used to indicate proof that the security requirements or the security requirements, not only for the 171 but the CMMC, are being adhered to.
So what I'll say about reciprocity, and Stacy gave a good update on that. Essentially, reciprocity is going to start with the government side. And so as those requirements are identified, the assessors will have to, as the assessors are going out, when the reciprocity question comes up, if there's reciprocity with the capability, that has to be included in the assessment and acknowledged. And so the artifacts that will be drawn out, those will be defined by the reciprocity discussion. So the big picture, as I'll say it, is we're still working through, and we have people who are coordinating with the DoD on this, looking at the various items for reciprocity that are going to come up, how that will be identified and defined, and then based off of that, what are the things that we need to incorporate into the assessments in terms of artifacts, so that the assessors know what to be looking for and where to give credit where credit is due, or at least to check that to make sure that what was agreed upon is done. So we're still working through that.
Okay, Robert, as a follow-up.
So from where I guess on the industry aspect of it all, I think one of the concerns is cost. And I know that, I'm reading some of the questions that come up, and it will be kind of based and indirect. But when you look at the 800-171 and you were able to self-certify, part of that, as you know, is the POAMs. If you have a roadmap to get something in place, that was good. On the CMMC front, your controls are in place and you're actively managing these controls, at least at level 3, where we're trying to go. So being small, we're going from, and we had to reprioritize a lot of our initiatives because it went from the planning and having the roadmap in gradual steps to saying, hey, all of this has to get done within this particular time frame if we want to stand ready for that audit and certification. So what we, and I don't know if this will benefit everybody, what we did is we took a look at our current as is to see if we're maximizing all of the systems and software that we had to make sure that if it could meet the control, that we configured it to meet the control. If it couldn't, then we were out looking for vendors that would enable us to meet the control. So I can speak to our company that, yeah, there was a financial side to this where we had to invest in some new tools, but being in my role, I wanted those tools anyway because I wanted to make sure that my company is secure as we grow. But there was a cost side to this that we had to, I guess, bring forward that was on our longer roadmap that we moved up to the forefront now. So we're going to take the hit now to make sure we can get things implemented so we could be certified at the level that we need. And if I could just ask one other question, it was from back and forth. One of the other things that I missed is I know that there's 17 on the procurements that are upcoming. Well, we're a current DoD contractor and we do some business on, and of course the IT side, that's why we're looking at the level 3 for this because of what we do. What about current DoD contracts, and when do you believe that certain levels of those will be brought over and the standard will have to be upheld to maintain your work on those programs?
So two things, right? So let's go back real quick to your POAM issue. And, you know, so the NIST 800-171 really came onto the scene in like 2013. And then it became a self-attestation requirement in 2017. And so when we went back and looked, people had the same POAM for like 5 years, right? And they weren't making positive steps to close those gaps. So unfortunately, yeah, it's pushing people to spend money faster than they had originally anticipated. But, you know, from one perspective, if you don't fix the hole in the boat for 5 years, you're probably going to be on the bottom of the ocean, right? So, you know, we've got to push forward to make that happen, to get people to take this seriously, because it does have, you know, I don't think companies actually understand the impact that it has to them as well as to our data, right? And that's why we have an F-35 over in China that looks, you know, a plane that looks just like our F-35 over in China. So those are the things we've got to keep our eye on the ball, is maintaining our superiority in the global economy and the global military. Now, oh Lord, I'm getting old because I just forgot the second part of your question was,
Current DoD programs.
Oh, that's right. So what we're going to do is, we do not anticipate modifying existing contracts to include CMMC unless it's an identified pathfinder or pilot before we get to the rule going final, right? And those are just for risk reduction. If we go into the pathfinders and the pilots that we're doing, we're going to be doing some mock assessments, but they'll be not for attribution, not for credit. So a company that goes through them would get ostensibly a look at where they stand, but they would still have to go out and contract with a C3 PAO to come in and do an actual assessment for certification, right? Now, when we're putting in place our new IDIQ contracts, even though they may not be one of the initial implementation programs identified by the department, what we are suggesting is that if it's, so say in 2022, you put an IDIQ in place that's going to go for 5 years, that will have task orders that would be placed after the full rollout requirement in 2026. They're going to put verbiage in there that says, we reserve the right that once CMMC becomes a full requirement, that we would impose CMMC requirements on those task orders issued after that date. Does that make sense? So
yes.
If you have a task order that on a contract that was awarded in 2022, that's being let in 2026, and now it's supposed to apply to all contracts, that task order may have a CMMC requirement on it. So, but you can anticipate, if you're within your contract, that you will not have to be CMMC certified for that contract, but the logical follow-on or the resultant contract afterwards that you might compete for the same work that you just did, you then, yea, verily, may have to be CMMC certified to garner that new award.
So,
does that make
let me, I was going to say thank you, and let me add one other thing onto it. And this, if this gets into, there is a role of responsibility not only on the DIB and OSD, but also the acquisition workforce. And what we have to do is we have to work together. There's this thing called procurement acquisition lead time. And we have to look at our contracts, and we have to work with the DIB, the contractors, as well as with Karlton and the CMMC AB, as well as Stacy, to see when things are going to be put in place. And we have to be that collector to take a look at the schedule. And if we know that we want something in, let's just say, fiscal year or calendar year 23, that we want to look at the CMMC, then as acquisition workforce professionals, we have to make sure that those particular things are in place to enable that and to start the conversation now. This is what the acquisition workforce must do in regards to market research. We have to work with OSD in regards to where the policy is. We have to work with the CMMC AB in regards to see what's available and when their schedule is going to be available in regards to assessors and what their training is going to be, and work with them, work with DCMA in regards to the DIPCAT, and understand how the assessments are being done and what artifacts are required to provide that proof, to make sure that we start the conversation and put that into the RFIs and RFPs. So again,
Yes.
we can't stay on the sidelines and expect things to happen. We have to be fully engaged. And this is
Yes.
where I turn it over to Karlton to say, what else can we do?
Well, and I'm glad you gave me that lead in, because I actually have a thought. And so, this kind of harkens back to both what Stacy has been saying and what Robert's been saying. And we've talked about this, what I'm about to bring up a little bit before. But, you know, part of the challenge as I see this, and as we have these conversations, a lot of times when you talk to the small, the mid-sized companies, it comes across, well, I'll say even sometimes the large companies, as an IT problem only, right? And because it's not, this is a holistic issue. And when we talk about getting ready for CMMC overall, the other question as I would turn this is, from a company perspective, where is cybersecurity in your rack and stack of things that I care about? Where is it in the conversations with executive leadership? And then how is that put into context so that the people who are working with information, not the technology guys, but the people who are working with information, that they understand that that information has to be protected, whether it's government information or if it's internal proprietary information from the company. And that starts the conversation of, how much do I put into my budget for cybersecurity writ large? How do I make sure that my company as a whole understands the practices and policies and procedures that I, as a company lead, put out, and get people to understand that they're part of that solution. And then to your point, Chris, that was just brought up, now as I'm looking at after I get my own house in order, as I'm looking at potential opportunities for contracts and so forth, now I got to be more strategic in my thought. And hopefully what I've done is I've said, you know, I have prepared myself as best as I can for internal processes and procedures. I'm going to leverage the fact that I had the NIST 800-171 before, kind of check my homework against that, going from a technology perspective and also from a business process perspective. And I'm going to layer CMMC on top of that. And then looking out 2 to 3 years at the various contracts I expect are coming out, I'm going to pre-position myself to be effective in those conversations. That is not an IT conversation. That is a business conversation. And so my recommendation to industry writ large, with everything that's been said so far, is this as well. Today, start looking at your organization and asking, how do I manage cybersecurity in my organization? How do I make sure that I'm good to go today? And I know it. I have something that I can draw on that says, I know it for a fact versus a guess. And oh, by the way, when these well, it's no longer new, but as these requirements come down for CMMC and the next step, how do I make sure I don't just shove it off to the IT guys and say, go fix this for me? How do I make sure that my company, my organization understands this is a team effort? And then from the long-term strategic piece, make sure my acquisition people are going, all right, this is going to be a business enabler for us, cybersecurity, cyber readiness. So I want you to add that into the acquisition strategy and to look for those opportunities where we have structured ourselves to be cyber ready and go for that to help us get that business and everybody's getting well together. That would be my recommendation.
Chris, could I piggyback on something there?
Oh, yes, please, go ahead.
So I agree 100% with what Karlton was saying. About a year and a half ago, we decided to quit looking at cyber in a silo and make it a business. It's a business discussion. And from that point on, we started what we call our security first mindset. And we incorporated into our hiring practices, our onboarding, its annual training. So we're working on releasing our new corporate security playbook, so everybody knows how we need to do things to protect stuff for the company, and what they should be thinking about, not only at the corporate level, the department and business unit level, but down to the project level as well. And it talks about their roles and different different roles and what you have to know for which role you're in. So I completely agree. On the business side is that it's a business challenge, and when you come together, you get the leadership backing and you start to formulate a plan. It makes it a lot easier to accomplish things when everybody's on the same page.
And I want to jump on that too, right? So one of the things that we need companies to be thinking of as we go through this is like the welder, right? This prime sent him the entire structural design of that aircraft, whereas really all he needed were the spot welds. So companies would think through what they're doing with their subs and make sure that they only give them the information necessary for them to do their job. They may not necessarily have to be in receipt of information that's at the level 3 controlled unclassified information. They could be at the level 1, but because we don't want to take the time to cut out those parts of that AutoCAD program and send them just what they need, oftentimes we just send them the whole thing, right? Just attach it to email and send it off. We're putting them in harm's way as well, because what we find is that our adversaries are lying in wait for a lot of the subcontractors, not necessarily the bigger prime.
No, great point. We're getting close to the end, so what I'd like to do is go back to the panel members, and if they can just make like a 5-minute statement summarizing or making another point that they want to bring out. And I'll start with you, Karlton, then Robert, and then I'll finish up with Stacy.
Oh, thank you, Chris. And so I'll just kind of, from my end, wrap it up this way. First of all, it's a great opportunity to be part of this. For me personally, one of the reasons that I jumped in to join this effort is because for a number of years on active duty, I defended the nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And cybersecurity was one of those areas that, just from an American perspective, from a US perspective, with the reliance we have on technology, it's one of the things we really have to lock down. So this effort as a whole is extremely important. And I want to thank everybody from industry, from government, and all points in between who are part of supporting it and helping it to move forward. We're going to continue to work aggressively to move things ahead. And the questions that you have, make sure that you're forwarding those questions to us, and then we'll continue to work those answers. But at the end of the day, we're one team all in to make this happen. So thank you for the opportunity to speak today. And thank you for what you're doing for national security, because this is about protecting our livelihood. So thank you.
Okay, Robert, pick up on that.
Yeah, it was great to be part of this. Thank you guys for allowing me to voice some of the concerns of industry and to hear where things are going. On my side, I completely support the movement, because I think it is important to secure not only ourselves, but our supply chain as well. And it happens to everybody. We've had a vendor that was compromised, and they compromised a financial email, and were emailing us to request changing of banking information from their actual domain. So it can happen to anybody, and it's always better to be on the proactive side than the reactive side. You don't want to wait till something happens to try to fill that gap or to fix that problem. It's always better to try to do things ahead of time. I am glad that cyber is now becoming a focus. Like we said, in our company, it was a silo for a while, but we made it a business challenge, and it's organization wide. I think we're doing the right things to protect the supply chain, to protect not only the DoD work that we're doing, but our own employees and our own proprietary information. No, it's not an easy thing, but when you lay it all out and you take it one piece at a time, it's impossible to say I'm going to implement 150 controls in a month, so you take it one thing at a time, you do your gap analysis, and you move forward, and you make your plans, and it is attainable. And I am hopefully will be proof that it is. Once we're certified, you can bring us back on as living proof that it is attainable.
Okay, thank you very much. And Stacy, you're bringing it home.
I am bringing it home. Oh my gosh. So here, one of the things that Robert just said that I want everybody to keep in the forefront of their mind. CMMC is the beginning. It is the foundation that we're going to build our security on, right? We have to get cybersecurity in line and start protecting our information. But the big picture goes all the way to that supply chain risk management and understanding who we're doing business with and where the weak links in our supply chain are that our adversaries are taking advantage of and attacking. So, you know, this is an entire nation issue that we need to band together to make sure that we tighten it up so we're not giving our hard-earned data to our adversaries. You know, one of the things is, so I used to work at NavAir, and I saw the F-35 and in its production and its development. And I saw those engineers going through hours of painstaking research to make sure that they understood why we were having wing weight issues as it got off the carrier. And you think about all those people who spent all those years in development, putting all that money from our nation's perspective into that design, to have somebody come in and hack us and steal it. So they just got what we invested billions of dollars in for free. And those are the kinds of things that we need to make sure that we protect our nation against. We make sure that we maintain our economic and military superiority. And it's got to be something that we think about each and every day, even in our personal lives. We need to make sure that we secure our personal information and that we secure our networks at home so we don't have people coming in and stealing from us. You know, we work awfully hard to have what we have in this nation. We are not a bunch of slackers, and we need to protect that. And I appreciate everybody's time today. I think this was a great opportunity. I welcome anybody. I've given my email address on the chat window, so feel free to email me with questions. If you email me a request for a speaking engagement, what I will do is give it to our front office, and they will help get either Ms. Arrington or myself lined up to speak if we can accommodate it. And I appreciate your patience. So you guys have a good day, and we're working very hard to make sure this thing comes together.
Okay, thank you very much. And one thing I want to mention, this is a challenge. So the majority of the webinars, the webcasts, the things that people have seen online, you know, since we can't meet in person, has really been focused and centered on industry in the DIB. Stacy and I had a private conversation because I asked her, I says, well, where's the training for the acquisition workforce? And I think that's the key thing. And she said, hey, there's only like 3 of us. So this is one of the things that, you know, Stacy has talked about in regards to one of the roles that DAU is playing. And I guess I'm the guinea pig at the time, but I'm really focused on making sure that the acquisition workforce understands that there must be a collaboration between academia, industry, and government. And this is, to me, this is a dream panel to have all 3 of those entities here. And I wish we had 3 or 4 hours, you know, but we don't. And one of the things that, you know, we really appreciate the questions that you had in the Q&A. I wish we will have time. Hopefully, we will be able to capture that and we can answer that later on, as well as provide our contact information. But, you know, my focus is really taking a look at the acquisition workforce, taking everything that Stacy and Robert and Karlton has stated, put that in the context so that the acquisition workforce can respond and that we can be prepared to successfully implement and execute this new CMMC process. This is my takeaway. This is hopefully, if there's acquisition workforce folks on there, they will listen to this, and it's going to be us to make sure that we make this successful. It cannot be a one-show pony and, you know, push that blame to other folks. We have to take that responsibilities. I want to thank personally Stacy, Robert, and Karlton. This has been very valuable. Hopefully the audience have picked up on a few things, but this was very valuable for me. For the things that I've heard, I will incorporate that into my monthly webcast series. And again, they're asking for our email if possible, Karlton, and so hopefully we can provide that. And again, most people know, again, Chris Newber, you can call me anytime. Unfortunately, my better half, she's about ready to run me out because I do get phone calls all the time though. But again, I think this is a important thing. If you think of all the panelists, we live and breathe this, and we're continually thinking of ways to help the organizations out, because again, the bottom line, and I'll end this, is to protect the sensitive information that resides on the contractor's information. This is our goal. This is what we're trying to achieve, and we're trying to maintain the U.S. Technology superiority.